Okay, so our story kicks off right after the death of Israel's very first king, Saul. Now you'd think David would be celebrating, right? I mean, Saul hunted him for years. But he doesn't. Instead, he mourns. He actually writes this beautiful, moving poem for the man he still calls the Lord's anointed. This first move tells you everything about the kind of king David's going to be: patient and respectful of God's timing.
And what's so fascinating is how it all plays out. David doesn't just grab the crown. He waits. First, he's made king over his own tribe, Judah. But get this, it's a full 7 years before the rest of Israel comes to him. Think about that. He didn't take the kingdom by force. He waited for God to bring it to him.
Once he's finally king over everyone, David moves fast. He captures Jerusalem and makes it the capital. Just a brilliant move. But then he does something even bigger. He brings the Ark of the Covenant, the very symbol of God's presence, into his new city. He's literally merging the political and spiritual heart of the nation. And in this moment of just pure joy, he dances like crazy before God and everybody, basically saying, I don't care how silly I look, this is for God. It's this incredible display of humility right at the peak of his power.
And this brings us to the absolute high point of David's reign. I mean, he's on top of the world. The kingdom is safe. He's living in a palace. And he starts to feel a little guilty. He's thinking, it's not right that I live in this nice house while the Ark of God is just in a tent. So he decides he's going to build God a magnificent temple.
But then, we get this incredible plot twist. God sends a message through the prophet Nathan, and he completely flips David's plan upside down. David says, I'm going to build a house, a temple for you, God. And God comes back and says, no, David, you've got it backward. I'm going to build a house, a royal dynasty for you.
And this right here, this promise is a complete game changer. It's known as the Davidic covenant, and it's arguably the most important moment in the whole story. From this point on, the hope for a future, perfect king, a Messiah, is forever linked to David's family line. It's a promise of an eternal kingdom, which is just, wow.
But the story doesn't stay on that mountaintop. In a really shocking turn, David's greatest failure doesn't happen when he's weak or on the run. No, it happens right here, at the absolute height of his power and success, when everything is peaceful and secure. And the whole tragedy just unfolds in this devastating chain reaction. It all starts with idleness. The king should be at war with his men, but he's home, bored. That boredom leads to lust when he sees Bathsheba. That lust leads to adultery. When that sin creates a problem, a pregnancy, he turns to deceit to try and cover it up. And when that fails, he stoops to murder, arranging for one of his most loyal soldiers to be killed. It's a horrifying cascade, just one bad decision after another, showing how power can totally corrupt. So, on the surface, it looks like David got away with it. But then the story gives us this short, bone-chilling line. God saw, and he sends the prophet Nathan to confront David. Nathan tells him this story, and when David gets angry at the man in the story, Nathan just points his finger and says, "You are that man." And to David's credit, he doesn't make excuses, he doesn't try to shift the blame, he just says it, straight up, he confesses. And while God forgives him for that genuine repentance, the consequences, well, they don't just disappear. And that's a huge point in this story. Forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Remember, Nathan had warned David, "The sword will never depart from your house." And what comes next is just the heartbreaking fulfillment of that exact prophecy. The violence David did in secret now explodes out in the open, right inside his own family. The pattern is just awful. It's like David's own sin of lust and violence gets grotesquely mirrored in his kids. His son Amnon assaults his own half-sister. So then another son, Absalom, gets revenge by murdering Amnon. And after years of bitterness, that same son, Absalom, launches a full-blown rebellion to steal the throne from his own father, forcing David to run for his life. Just picture that for a moment. This is the same David who once ran from his enemy, King Saul, and now here he is, an old man, weeping as he flees the very capital city he built, being hunted by his own child. It's just so painful. And the lesson is clear. Being the king didn't protect him from the fallout of his own choices.
So this all builds to one final tragic showdown. David's loyal army goes to battle against the rebels, led by his son Absalom. And as a father, David just begs his commanders, please deal gently with the young man Absalom for my sake. But in the chaos of battle, Absalom is killed.
When the news of the victory finally reaches David, he doesn't celebrate. He just breaks. This cry, it's one of the most heartbreaking things you'll ever read. His kingdom is safe, yes, but his son is gone. For David, the victory feels like the ultimate defeat. It's the final, agonizing price for a sin that started so long ago on a palace rooftop.
Now, this story doesn't just end there in total despair. David does get his throne back. He returns to Jerusalem and he rules for the rest of his life. But things are never the same. The kingdom is scarred. That glory from the early years is gone.
And that's really the core of it, isn't it? The story is brutally honest. David is God's chosen king. He's called a man after God's own heart. But he is also deeply, deeply flawed. He is the beloved king, for sure, but he is not the perfect king, not even close. So the book ends on this bittersweet note. It's like a deep sigh for all the potential and innocence that was lost because of sin. But it's also a hope. By showing us the failures of even the very best king on earth, the story makes us look forward. It makes us long for that future perfect king who is promised to come from David's line.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering question. David's story is just a huge mess of contradictions, right? It's faith and failure, greatness and terrible sin, all wrapped up in one person. So it makes you wonder, can a deeply flawed leader still be used for a greater purpose? Can they still, in the end, leave behind a legacy not of ruin, but of hope?